All right, folks, good evening. My name is Ivan Salinas. I'm the program manager here at Beyond Baroque. Welcome to the Wanda Coleman Theater. I want to acknowledge our presence on the ancestral and unceded territory of the Tongva peoples, the first peoples and stewards of this land. We acknowledge the wrong done to indigenous communities through colonialism and genocidal practices. As an arts organization, we are committed to uplifting their stories, cultures, and communities. Beyond Broke is a nonprofit literary arts organization founded in 1968. Its roots are deeply embedded here in the Venice community. Began as an experimental literary magazine founded by George Jury Smith, and it evolved into the art space we know today. First, they had a bookstore in Abbot Kinney, and then in the late 70s, the poets and artists that were running the space at the time moved in here into the original Venice City Hall building, and it's been Beyond Baroque's home ever since. And we've hosted a variety of readings, performances, gallery exhibitions. We continue that legacy. We have been here 56 years and going strong. And it's all thanks to the support of community members. Just so you have an idea of the many things we do in the space, we have weekly workshops on Zoom in poetry and fiction, and we are currently offering a paid workshop that is focused on the poetic form of pantoums, and it's being facilitated by Jim Cushing, and that's happening next weekend on June 15th. And also with readings coming up for the summer, we are having poets Tracy Kato Kirayama, Dick Wayne, Holly Hardy, K.R. Morrison, among a few others, for this special sort of Bay Area and LA group reading. And author J. Ryan Straddle will be reading from his book Saturday night at the Lakeside Supper Club. And we're also bringing back a reading series we have in the staircase called Skulls and Stairs. And this installment on June 27th will feature queer alternative literature poets from New York and LA, including Lily Lady, Brittany Menjivar, Jack, and a few more that will be reading with them are Jack Skelly and Omar Barcena. So hope to see you all at any of those events. Later in the fall, Michelle T will be back with us for a special series we have lined up with that. And if you are interested in becoming a member to Beyond Broke, we offer perks with some of the merch we have, as well as discounts on books and events that we have here in the space. Sometimes if we charge a fee, you have the ability to come in for free, and you are directly supporting our mission to support writers and artists across the globe. Really, we have an international presence of poets and artists here, and thanks to the support of the community, we're able to pay some of the artists and keeping this place alive and thriving. So please consider becoming a member, and we are giving some cool tote bags if you'll get a membership at the foundation level, so you can show them off and put some of your dopamine merch in there, like the dopazine, cool broadsides I saw outside, SLUTS anthology, and some of the individual titles or the many books that Michelle T has written over the years. But yeah, a huge thank you to our staff, Eric Alberg in the booth, as well as Jimmy Vega, our associate director, Quentin Ring, executive director, Michelle Raphael and Genesis Perez in the bookstore. Really, thank you all for making this this night happen, but also the many more that we have throughout the year. And after the reading, please feel free to connect, chat. We have our reception still outside, and yeah, you're welcome to also visit the gallery that we have here outside in the lobby and upstairs. But for tonight, we are celebrating Pride, and we do so beyond the month of June. You can find queer writers here in almost every month of the year, and it's really a pleasure that we get to collaborate with Michelle and this project of dopamine that she has been building over these past couple of years. And really, it's just the beginning. This is like some of the first authors that we are getting to see from the press itself. So Michelle will be introducing the readers, will be hosting and saying a few words about Dopamine Press. Just so that you know a little bit about her, Michelle is an author, a Guggenheim Fellow, the founder of Drag Queen Story Hour, and the publisher of Dopamine Books. Please give her a warm welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Yvonne. And thank you, Jimmy and Genesis and Eric and everyone for having us. I love Beyond Baroque. Sister Spit did a show here in 1998, and they let us, we were traveling with, trapeze artists, of course. Because Cindy, who I did Sister Spit with, had a crush on one of the trapeze artists, so we ended up with a 3-person trapeze act. But they also read poetry while they did the trapeze, so it fit with our mission statement. But here, Beyond Baroque, we got to start the whole event that night by having the tattoo artists, the trapeze artists, rig their trapeze in the tree out front, and then they did it outside, and then we came in. It was so cool. So I just love this place. Is so special. I really love it. Thank you for inviting a dopamine showcase. Dopamine is a queer nonprofit, tax write-offable for donations, small press that I started with Beth Pickens and with the help of Semiotext. Very, very huge help we're getting from them. And yeah, we're very new. Our first book just came out last month. It's called SLUTS. It's an amazing anthology. There's copies of it in the bookstore. And we also have a little merch table out front. And this is the first night that anyone can actually purchase a SLUTS cum towel. So we have these beautiful plush little cum towels that are they're actually so nice. You would want them in your guest room for your guest's ejaculate, I guess. But they're beautiful, and they're designed, it's the cover of the book, but the towel is designed by Seth Bogart and Wacky Wacko. So beautiful. And we have other cool stuff out there too. We have our little zine sampler. We have cute little dopamine pins. We have an amazing broadside from Vera Blossom. And if you get all of the things, you get $10 off. So just think about it. If you're just like, I've been meaning to buy every fucking thing Dopamine has ever put out, tonight's the night to do it. You get $10 off. Okay, that's enough about that. But thank you. So yeah, I'm going to bring up 4 writers whose books we're going to be publishing. It's very exciting. The very first writer is Amelia Ada. And yeah, we are going to be publishing her book-length poem, Hard and Glad, which is so honest and funny and sometimes dark and just, it's got so much heart in it, just like Amelia does. Please welcome her.
Hello, thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Beyond Baroque. I'm so honored to be here. So Hard and Glad, I kind of describe it to my friends as like my egg crack book. You know, it was like the sort of 3+ years that led up to me realizing that I was trans. And part of that was getting a divorce from a person I was married to. And in the book, I call that person Disappointed. That's his name. I'm going to start, it's a book-length poem, but it's very narrative, it's sort of prosy little bits. I'm going to start sort of with the third movement. And I think that's all you need to know. Okay. 3. I write this in archival ink on a burning page. In dreams, writes Coleridge, the passage also gathers. A shard of shatterproof glass extracted itself above my right eye years after the accident. You remember, I was hit by a car. Slow resistance, gradual rejection. I know about the end because I've dreamed of the beginning, a slow burning falsetto announcing the next stop. It has been a long time since we spoke, my mother and me. 3 years. I feel good and this worries me. Who am I to feel anything but her always at the back of my throat like an itch? In the house on Xmas Eve, that same falsetto burning on the mast hung like neglect, a bat with burning wings. I was built for flight, built to flee. It takes everything in me. Tonight, I will drive to El Segundo. Dream, a flooded house. The house belongs to her. The flood begins in the basement. The water rises. It comes in the rooms on the ground floor through the air vents. It rushes in, seeping and rushing during a family reunion. I lead my family upstairs to the top story, the highest level of the house. From a window at that height, I watch the water submerge everything outside. I do not speak to her. The water does not stop, and the family realizes that it will not stop. Realizes there are no higher heights in which to climb. The roof, I guess, inaccessibly pitched or non-existent. Their options exhausted, they begin to sing. There are good days and bad days with Disappointed. The difference between is remarkable. How simple a day begins terribly and ends in comfort, enjoyment, pleasure, or even, perhaps, love. I, a curtain between the two, and how I run back and forth. I, a runner between days and days. On the bad, everything is ending. My hate for him and for myself blossoming fulsome and new. On the good, hate withers, as what ends begins again anew, and with what happily feels like permanence. But then it happens again, so quickly, the negotiations of two strong-willed people in one space, trying to function as one. There's a snag, a hitch, and it breaks. The good feeling all over the floor, the shards of it embedded in our necks. It didn't have to happen, or did it? What's the difference between it and the sutures that stick together the mind's amorous surface? I remember being a teenager in my room, alone in my room, writing thoughts similar to this, but about myself alone. I never wrote about you, except in poems too radical even for me to understand. My mom never married, not even the tall man, but she'd understand this feeling, I'm certain. I will just apologize and be done with it. Having calmed down, I should just apologize and be done with it. What did I do? I should just apologize and be done with it. Life happens, and in between the happenings is also life, and I apologize in order to live. I am happy, am happy, am happy. Repeat it to believe. Am happy, am happy, am had. Was once had, was fulfilled in deeper, was once one brought to the surface, begging or begged to, or what will I write when all the eyes are removed? Surveyed the wreckage of my ancestry.com. Got message from distant cousins who knew the tall man. The strain of ambition overtakes the strain of mental illness. Almost wrote mental illness. Mental illness. Do I or no? Do I or don't? I've been thinking sober, staying so, ready for a certain form of clarity. I need clarity. I'm so unsure about him. Is it time we split? Has that time come? I'm afraid and hate writing this. What am I afraid of? I've been thinking soberly, staying so. I've been sick for weeks, needing to be alone, yet craving the not alone, craving disappointed's constant surround, all the question marks he texts me when I'm away, constant haptic pinging, ping, ping, hello, hello, hello. Mental illness. Come up for air. Come up to me quickly, find a seat. Welcome any and all to the feast of my denial. I have been trying to stop myself from saying to myself certain things such as, quote, I want to kill myself, which arrives rapidly and always unpredictable and a little wet, as if it had been caught in a storm. The mind wanders to an error unbecoming, to the cutting off of family, to whatever disregard of duty, and there it is. To get out is to want to go back to a home to which one can no longer return. To get out is to want to return immediately. If I lost the home of my own making, I'd have nowhere to go. Late morning overcast. Disappointed, sleeping like always. I've been meditating, novice, novitiate, and from the small bedroom window, I watch first a hummingbird and then also a bee move from one orange fluted flower on our neighbor's tall bush, or is it a short tree? I watch him breathing. The bee moves from one to another. I repeat my new meditation mantra, which I found in a poem. Hard and glad. Did I tell you about the time I wore some worry around my face and set my stems parading around the quad? Those were cheap heels, but sturdy. Or all the years I drank myself sick, missing the tall man without realizing it. The several blackouts, all adorned, reaching for something. I already told you about the shard of glass above my eye, drunk when the car hit me, extruded like a zit, extracted exponentially. Portraits of it forthcoming. As Gertrude Stein said about art, like it or not, there it is. And it happens very often that I fantasize about the husbands of my cis friends. They are handsome and hairy and gentle. often proffer a curious air, wounding me. Hard and glad, a mantra for my messier practice. Desiring disassembling, a brick-by-brick sort of motion, nothing complete, and the nothing. I am hard and glad, and you are. Secret Service in the middle distance, middled air. There is a gentle slope, hard and glad, toward which, panting, we roll, and you are. Screen time, screen test. More words I know, but know not why. Like hard and glad little moons. Hard and glad through the mine scrub and the blaze, fed by wind and neglect, steep gradations, dense dry forest, sap, sap. Make wishes in and on the cloud bank. You know those aren't clouds. Forever feeling when the tall man died, when she died to me, loose like this band t-shirt disappointed bought for me in the neighborhood where everyone thought they knew him. I know him, hard and glad for it. I wish nothing could be better. I am very tired, but continue. Monitoring the haze remotely, the dark red pixels on the thermal imaging map get brighter and brighter and brighter. There, near disappointed, fires grow. Here, the addict above me play fights with his son. I wish I didn't know anything. Hard and glad to be in this body, shuffled and shuffling between scruffy thoughts as I do, self-harming thoughts, the tie between several like a thick drip of spit. These hard, glad feelings unasked for, these stones in the shuffling blades disposing, lying awake in bed, my heart pounding like I'm being chased, like I'm running. I don't know what. There's a good chance it's you giving chase, you with your paltry steps and unbidden offerings, you depleting, you arriving. There an air of rejection, there an air in supple fields abstraction and abundance of fuel for burning. I'm wasted in the red flag warning, unsure of what I'm hating, what I'm missing, where I'm falling. Anyway, these days, I've become passionate about a man who practices the healing arts and is very popular online. Let's call him X. Let's call him X, Y, and Z, all three. He lives in a huge house in West Hollywood, but dresses like I have been, unconcernedly. He has a very good belly for rubbing, and his massages are very intimate. I'm not saying we are fucking, no genital contact. He practices pleasure at the edges. He once said he loved watching me sink into it. I see him once a month. Disappointed found him for me on something called Yelp, to relieve my stress. I had a feeling he was offering this experience as something individual, not for us, and it fortified the outlines of myself and my love for him, a nice thing to do. This beautiful man attends to me, enamors me of my often neglected body, or my love thereof neglected, and sends me back to disappointed. I'll stop there. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Amelia. Hard and Glad will be out in 2026. It's right around the corner. Our next reader is Amanda-Faye Jimenez. She's a writer and a comedian. She's working on a collection of essays about beauty and nightlife and who the fuck knows what else. All kinds of great stuff, though. And when it all comes together, we get to publish it. It's very exciting. Please welcome Amanda-Faye.
I'm going to take a sip of water because I'm a professional. So I have this joke that I always used to tell before I would do readings where I would be like, this is an excerpt from my book. And then everyone would laugh because everyone knows I'm never going to fucking write a book. And now, thanks to Michelle and Beth, I'm writing a book. It's happening, and thank you so much, Beyond Baroque. So that being said, excerpting is like difficult for me because I'm like, oh, this is like a bigger piece now. It's not just a little chunk. So I'll give you some background. I keep trying to write about like lip gloss, and my best friend from high school who died last year keeps jumping in to the mix, and it's always about her. And so this is sort of about her, and what you need to know. I mean, it gets there. What you need to know about this bit is that I wrote it down because I won't remember. Why I talk about lip gloss is that when she and I first became friends, we had a lip gloss contest, which is when two 15-year-old girls put all of the lip glosses they own into a bag and bring them to school and count them to see who had more. I did win, but it was a really slim margin. And then also, important to this little bit is that my high school closed last year. It was an all-girls Catholic school, and that's not like a thing anymore, I think. And the last thing that's important is that Bjork was one of mine and Jenny's favorite artists. So I'll go ahead and get into this. When I was a little girl, when a new friend came over, as my mom did the niceties with the other mom in the foyer, I would stand with my feet planted, hands clasped behind my back, and swivel my waist with anticipation. I was trying not to seem too excited, because even as I felt like my body would burst at the idea of connection, I knew from somewhere that I was supposed to play it cool, which, of course, is twisting your hips, hiding your hands, and smiling maniacally with your lips sucked in. Eventually, I bring the other girl to my room to show her my toys. This was a delicate dance, because when I would be the guest and the friend would show me her stuff a little too proudly, I noticed. There was nothing a girl could do that was worse than bragging. My mom made sure I knew early that pride and self-satisfaction were two of the ugliest sins. And I also knew because of her that people who look like us are already ugly enough, so it's important to be pretty on the inside. In 1996, sorry, that was like a really, that was a weird pause. I'm going to keep going. In 1996, my only toys were a massive collection of lip gloss, not to brag. I went to an all-girls Catholic high school in Sierra Madre. I had picked this school because it was small, liberal, relatively inexpensive, and because when I did my campus visit, the ambassador I shadowed around seemed like she'd been hand-chosen by God, especially for me. Just kidding, I was already agnostic by then, but I liked her. She was just the right amount of cool and uncool. Tall with honey blonde hair, striking bone structure, and bushy eyebrows like Mariel Hemingway. She was nice to me, but not so nice that it seemed like she cared too much if I liked her. I observed that she was popular and moved around campus with ease, but also she was clearly dorky enough to volunteer to don the school's ill-fitting special occasion blazer on a regular school day to give an even dorkier 8th grader a grand tour of potential sisterhood. Last year, at the closing party they had for alumni, I ran into her by the wine table, where she and her friend were giggling and carrying on. I felt suddenly shy when I didn't see recognition in her face, but still I decided to tell her she was the reason I ultimately chose to go there, and have always been so glad I did. She was touched and wine drunk, and said it meant the world to her to hear that, as she is currently working as a community manager for a large apartment complex. Her even wine-drunker friend started gassing her up excitedly, droplets of red flying from her plastic cup as she spoke. "See, you were meant for this." They told me her ultimate dream job is doing tours on the Jungle Cruise at Disneyland. Back in freshman year, I was getting impatient, waiting for the sisterhood to kick in. The girls who gravitated toward me were timid and seemed even more fearful of who they might end up becoming than I was. My friend Amelia from junior high beckoned me to the TV room at her house. "Look at this. She's so weird. What even is this?" she screeched. "Yeah, what even is this? It's so weird." I didn't have cable, and she'd been waiting to show me this for some time. It was Bjork being chased and consumed by a giant plush bear in the music video for Human Behavior. Something stirred in me. Liza, my first new friend by seating circumstance, said, "I think I'm just really normal. I'm not like some of these girls." Her tone was skimming the surface of judgment, but she was too nice to really go there. I was defiant. What if we are so normal that we're the weird ones? She rejected this, but I made it my whole personality in my circle of misfits for weeks. Yeah, I guess I'm just so normal that it's weird, am I right? The punchline met to tepid laughter, but I was undeterred. I was starting to see that my chronic inability to fit in could be cool if I could figure out how to embrace it. What I wanted seemed simple: to meet my exact perfect friends who liked the same stuff as me, even though I didn't really know what that was, and were exactly as cool and uncool as I was. As the misfit circle solidified, I knew I didn't belong. The same thing that always happened was happening again. A group of nerds had made me their queen. But I was neither fit for nerddom nor queendom. I didn't even get good grades anymore. I was too depressed. And I've never been a natural leader, despite being loud and bossy. I guess I thought at all-girls school, without the distraction and cruelty of boys, things would be different. Or maybe I thought everyone here would be nerd queens, and I could blend in enough to not be bullied, but hopefully not so much that I disappear. Instead, I ended up being bullied so badly by a cholita named Tatiana and 3 white stoner girls who had peace signs and deadhead bear charms hanging from their hemp necklaces that I was planning on either killing myself or trying to transfer to the performing arts high school for drama. But I was too chicken to actually go through with either plan, so I came back sophomore year determined to find my place. In the back row of Mr. Bailey's history class, where Jenny always sat in her desk chair with her legs folded in some wild configuration under her, a vintage bandana kerchiefed on her head, sometimes asleep, but always paying attention, I quipped to her that boys love shiny lip gloss because it makes them think of blowjobs. And she laughed harder than I expected. I was proud to have made my new friend laugh. And because we are new friends, when she asked me how I knew this, she was not being cheeky about the fact that actually there was no way for me to know, as I was 15, had never kissed a boy, and probably hadn't even spoken to one in months. That's still true. Later, she will know me better than anyone, and she will still ask my advice about boys and tell me about her exploits, even as my lack of experience and latent lesbianism zooms me further and further from understanding. Later, she will also not tell me about things, or tell me them long after they happened, and when I react as judgmentally as she imagined, she will be vindicated. Thank you.
Amanda-Faye Jimenez, so good. Thank you. Our next reader is Brooke Palmieri. Brooke is working on a collection of essays called Bargain Witch, and we are going to get to publish that in October of next year. Not this October. Mark your calendars, 2025. Brooke Palmieri.
Oh, thanks so much. It's really amazing to be here. This is an essay from the book, or an excerpt from the book, and it's called Crushed Velvet. Between the ages of 14 and 17, I ran the second most popular website about the actor Alan Rickman. My obsession cracked open a whole world. My entire personality became dominated by a projection of a projection about who this old British man was, embellished by deep research. What did the intensity of my fandom mean? I honestly didn't know, but I always knew I was developing something beyond a celebrity crush. I just followed my feelings and all related compulsions where they led me and waited for meaning to emerge. At the time, I was so incredibly constrained by having no money, no friends, no freedom to move around, and no privacy outside my password-protected email. Even the door on my bedroom was broken and didn't close all the way. These years of self-fashioning through a bizarre obsession led to a kind of alternative education spanning different technologies and provoking revelation, transformation, ecstasy, attainment. I channeled my reading habits and obsessions and repetitive interests to build my own algorithm to survive being queer and trans on the outskirts of Philadelphia in the years roughly surrounding the Y2K scare. I took all the information I could find about Alan Rickman and used it to alter, discipline, and constrain my own behavior until I became a version of myself that I thought would be respected by the celebrity I was imagining in my head. By age 18, I fully metabolized everything I thought to be true about a person I had never met, devouring and absorbing him into my own body. Then I, Alan Rickman, got honest with myself and started having sex with women. And then I moved to London. And then when I had enough money, I started to medically transition into Alan Rickman. I read all of Jane Austen's novels because he was in Sense and Sensibility, the script of any plays he'd been in, Shakespeare, Chekhov, Noel Coward, you name it. I got into noir because of Murder Obliquely, a short film Alan was in with Laura Dern and Diane Lane from the series Fallen Angels, which I was able to download illegally off LimeWire. I read anything I could about animal magnetism and the early history of psychiatry, since I had specially ordered a DVD of Rickman as Franz Anton Mesmer, 1994, from the Suncoast video at the mall. I began to experiment with magnets and carrying them in my pockets. I wore more ruffles. They had made a comeback. Of course, I read Les Liaisons Dangereuses because of his award-winning turn as the libertine Valmont, and that got me into libertine novels of the 18th century I could find as either Penguin paperbacks or on projectgutenberg.com, like The Marquis de Sade and then Denis Diderot's Indiscreet Jewels. The Indiscreet Jewels is a novel about a magic ring that forces women's vaginas to speak and describe everyone they fucked. Awesome. I began prognosticating, reaching far out into anything Alan Rickman might get cast into so I could say, I knew it. I knew they were going to make a movie of the Indiscreet Jewels and he would be in it. This was all painstaking work that started with encyclopedias and card catalogs in very shitty local and school libraries that had very little to give to me, and the Walden books at the mall. But most importantly, at CVS, I would grab stacks of America Online 500 free hours CDs, which allowed me to dial into the internet. I started my own website, crushedvelvet.net, to answer the lack of up-to-date analysis within the fandom. This was sometime in 2002. I was 14. I had taught myself how to code and how to use Adobe Photoshop and designed all the graphics myself for love of Alan Rickman. A small group of about 6 people found me through this website, and we created a private Harry Potter roleplay where, like Alan Rickman, I played the Potions Master, Severus Snape. I would log into our message board every day and crank out long descriptions of the dark, brooding wizard that I felt myself to be. A young man with long, lank hair, tattoos, and flowing black robes of crushed velvet. My character quoted a lot of decadent poetry and Nine Inch Nails lyrics. The air of the room, of the dungeons where I/he lived, was heavily perfumed with wood smoke and incense. The bookshelves were crammed with old, rare, leather-bound tomes, gilt at the edges. I described gathering ingredients to perform some forbidden rite, summoning an obscure demon to avenge me, or reconstituting a papyrus scroll that long thought to be lost when the Library of Alexandria burned. In this way, Alan Rickman led me down the path of self-initiation into serious witchcraft, alchemy, necromancy. But most exciting of all, me and my co-conspirators would co-write descriptions of sexual encounters between our characters. I actually had a lot of experience writing about sex I'd never had by the time I had upgraded to human subjects. From age 12, I'd spent a long time lurking on the message boards of Neopets.com. Neopets was a website designed like a whole cartoon world. There were different landscapes, neighborhoods, amenities, games. You had these pets that were like variations of real and fabled animals: dogs, cats, wolves, griffins, dragons. My username was NeoGoddess87. I spent hours inhabiting the persona of Romulus, a powerful alpha wolf who prowled the message boards for mates to impregnate. I funneled all of my filthy, furtive imaginations through the lens of the only pornography I had seen at the time, nature documentaries about apex predators. The style of prose when role-playing as these creatures was extremely purple. It was like bodice ripper erotica. You could join someone else's thread on the message board or start your own. For example, I'd write, Eyes of blue fire and sharp fangs glare in the moonlight. All that's visible of the huge, muscled beast of ebon-hued pelt that lies crouched in the shadows of a gnarled old oak. With nostrils flared, he waits patiently to catch the scent of a she-wolf on the westerly wind. I'd refresh the page until someone responded, sometimes fielding multiple responses from competing she-wolves. We'd get to know each other like that for a little bit, and then, since we didn't want to get banned from neopets.com, we'd meet on AOL to get to the good stuff. Romulus stabbed at her, feeling ready to explode. His engorged member nodded, locking himself deep inside her. Guinevere's howls pierced through the night. Their echoes filled the forest with the rippling infinitude of her pleasure. The rapture of his deep and abiding penetration produced visions in her that anticipated the burst and blossom of his seed into the pack they would rear and rule together. Romulus lost control of his body, biting deeply into a branch of the oak tree as if to bridle himself amidst the violence of his orgasm. By the light of the full moon, the gnarls in the tree itself finally appeared as what they truly were, not so much the signs of old age, but scars from the teeth and claws of generations of wolves who had coupled here each rutting season. So by 2002, I guess I was ready to challenge myself as a writer and expand my horizons from the animal world to decant human sex, wolf sex into avatars of Alan Rickman in the Harry Potter movies, but which represented me. In my virginal ignorance, I thought that during sex, your whole body became one giant sensitive nerve, and orgasm was just the process by which, through a lot of stroking and petting, every single thing on a person's body would stand to collective attention, a full body erection that included all limbs, hair, pimples, goosebumps, down to this like turgid cellular level. So my character would spend a lot of time tracing his long, pale fingers across like the chins of the women that he was going to bed. And they'd like moan and moan as if their jawlines were sexual organs. This kind of slow teasing could go on for hours. In one session, my character had such an intense orgasm that he ejaculated all over the ceiling of the crypt. The cause of this, and this is a true story, was another character using a straight edge razor to merely shave his 5 o'clock shadow. In a later scene, a different character happened upon the ceiling jizz and scraped it off to use it in a potion to bind him to her. But my desires grew darker as my transition progressed. I started logging onto the computer to visit AOL chat rooms with a secret screen name I kept and told no one about. Piscean_Alan. Alan Rickman said once in an interview that he really identified with being a Pisces, that he felt caught between a duality of needing privacy and performing publicly. I felt that if Alan Rickman did have an AOL screen name, it would refer to his sign. So lingering in the chat rooms, making occasionally highbrow references and snarky remarks in outdated English, what I thought could be British English, using words like alas and methinks. Occasionally, I would get individual message requests from people in the chat. Hi, I have to ask, are you Alan Rickman? You seem like you could be him. After some flirtatious banter to avoid the question, I would circle back around to reveal my secret. Indeed, I am. Wouldn't an old British man say indeed a lot? But please, please do not share my screen name with anyone. I am quite private. That is how I met Diane, aka Mad4Rickman at AOL.com, for the second time. Diane was a divorcee in her 40s who first found me through crushvelvet.net. She was convinced when she spoke to me as me that we had been lovers in a past life, that I had been her boyfriend or something, and that we needed to do past life regression to get to the bottom of it. We talked all the time. She knew I was living at the time as a 16-year-old girl attending an all-girls Catholic high school. She told me a lot about her troubles as a single mother, especially with finding childcare. I told her about my ambition to move to a place in England called Cumbria to apprentice as a tailor with someone whose blog on men's fashion I read. She thought that was so cute. And then she found me as Piscean Alan and believed that I was really Alan Rickman. The word catfishing didn't exist in the Wild West of the early internet. Everyone just assumed the person they were chatting to was probably a serial killer. I was crossing in the opposite direction, seemingly a 16-year-old girl pretending to be a 58-year-old man. That made it okay, right? Eventually, Diane met a man at the Pennsylvania Renaissance Fair named Wayne. They started dating. She came online less and less, and we never regressed to past lives. And then I graduated from high school, and I moved to Philadelphia for college and met real-life people I wanted to be friends with. There was a world to inhabit and explore, something to speak into other than avoid. I shut down the website without an afterthought. Transition complete. Now that I was Alan Rickman, I didn't have to talk about it. I'd gone stealth. When the other Alan Rickman died in 2016, I received the most bizarre condolences from my parents, from someone I went to high school with who sought me out, from a few friends I had told about the website. It had been over a decade since I'd thought of him, but I had to say, thanks, Alan Rickman, for what your masculinity gave me as a teenager. Becoming you kind of made all my dreams come true. I did move to England. I did trace my pale finger down the spines of ancient books at Oxford. I did end up practicing witchcraft. I did end up wearing nice men's clothes. And I did, incidentally, encounter that other Alan Rickman twice at the theater. Our tastes had matched up. I waved and nodded to him and raised my champagne glass in his direction, cheers, and he raised his back, and he was just being a friendly actor. It was pretty cool. And I thought, if you only knew. And in time, I would find other ways of honoring his death through a very singular kind of grief. The grief of letting go of a dissociative experience that I used to survive a lot of pain. The relief of shedding an old habit that no longer served me. Sitting down to fill out the paperwork to prove I had gender dysphoria to get access to the hormones I needed, a lot of it came back to me. What is your relationship to the gender you were assigned at birth? How long have you lived as your chosen gender identity? Well, let me tell you how I survived the near-death experience of being assigned female birth by remaking myself into an old British thespian. Let me tell you about a dissociation I clung to so defiantly that it all came true, from the leather-bound books to the crushed velvet, and maybe most importantly, to fucking like wolves. That's that. Thank you.
It's like you think you know a person, you know? Wow, that was so great. Thank you, Brooke Palmieri. Amazing. Our final reader is Clement Goldberg, and they've written an incredible book called New Mistakes, and it will be out in September. It's so close we have galleys for it. It's very real. Please welcome the wonderful Clement Goldberg.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Dopamine. Thank you, Beyond Baroque, for having me. The galley is very real. This is what it looks like, September 10th, and you can pre-order it, should you want. So I'm very excited. I am just going to read from page 1 forward, which I haven't done before, so it's exciting. Julia woke up like a piece of sweaty sandwich meat. Her eyes were stuck to the nape of her dewy girlfriend, Reggie, and the back of her legs adhered to an accidental boyfriend whose van they all called home since trimming weed together in Northern California. Julia chalked the decision to open up their relationship to the fact that they had been perpetually high for months. Now she was over a month late to house sit for her half-brother, but mere exits away from keeping her word. Julia had to pee. She kissed her girlfriend's shoulder and slipped free without waking them. She grabbed a pair of cut-off shorts and a balled-up t-shirt, then quietly exited the passenger seat. She was still in love with her girlfriend, and maybe even the tiniest bit in love with her boyfriend, too. Rest stop parking lots can go either way. This one was blissfully quiet and a bit too bright. Not much foot traffic. Julia saw some cute yellow wildflowers on her way into the restroom. The flowers were so adorable that she plucked a handful. Unsure if it was because of all the sex she was having, the triangle-shaped bouquet made her think of pubic hair. She unzipped the front of her shorts and placed the flowers. It would have been sexy to have them sticking out of her panties like unshaven hairs, but she wasn't wearing any underwear. She had to work for the right bush. She shaped and arranged the flowers just so. Then she photographed herself from a number of angles, unsure if she should include more of her body in the frame. A random soccer mom, desperate to share a look of disgust, waited on Julia to notice her. Julia did not care how she felt, and without looking up from her phone, let her know that by saying, "What?" with a hard period. Julia was reluctant to turn off airplane mode, but the cell service was terrible anyway, so it didn't matter. Her half-brother Franklin sometimes tried to call her for an update, but eventually resigned to firing off text flares in hopes of any kind of response. He had been incredibly generous for a new figure in her life, their relationship beginning in earnest only a year ago. Julia's mother was the younger second wife to Franklin's father, and Julia's birth marked Franklin's exit. She was already letting him down, but he did not know it, like a tree falling in the forest. She only had to duck his calls for a short while longer. Most troubling was the terrible phone reception that prevented Julia from sending her lovers thirst traps. She would have to bring them wildflower bouquets instead. Julia did not know that when the van door shut behind her, the two bodies still inside had gotten busy with their own phone cameras. Dressed only in balaclavas, the pair were weeks into making sex in public videos they uploaded to an amateur porn site under the handle Pussy Block. It was Reggie's idea, and she didn't tell Julia about it because then it would have become an art project. Julia just wanted to get plowed in a sundress like everyone else. She was sharing a similar thought aloud as Julia made it back to the van. Just inside the open door, Julia heard their shared boyfriend. "I only want to be with you. Can we please just break up with her already?" Reggie had hoped to maintain thruplehood, at least until she had tired of the proper bed and clawfoot bathtub at Franklin's house. She was so close she could smell the freshly laundered linens. Julia should have said something, anything to let them know that she was standing within earshot. There was a decent amount of self-harm in her decision to eavesdrop. It was almost too predictable how painful it was. Her heart met the business end of the Three of Swords as she rounded the parking space. In a series of loud, rapid-fire swooshes, Julia was impaled by an onslaught of text messages from Franklin. It surprised all three of them, and Julia made a split-second decision to keep things close to her chest. It was almost satisfying once she decided what came next. Julia extended her bouquets to the eager recipients. A boy toy in a man bun, and doe-eyed Reggie with her dainty septum ring, then released the delicate flowers just shy of the outstretched hands and weight, crushing the petals under her sneakers. She boarded the van, put on her sunglasses and hoodie for the fallout. Reggie remained outside but in the threshold. She was in triage mode, reciting passages from a nonviolent communication workshop in manic free verse. Julia lit a joint and put on headphones. The van doors flanked an impromptu outdoor theater. Julia, its lone audience member, watched on as a man-baby gloated under a veneer of self-flagellation. He patted his own back and cried, "Ouch." Julia did not hear a word that either stage performer uttered, but it was plain to see that they were both phoning it in. How insulting. Julia stubbed the joint, leapt from the van, and shoved him backwards. She mumble-yelled, "Go take your victory lap, you needy dickface." Julia was about to push him into the parking lot, but Reggie held her back. She whispered, "What are your needs?" Over and over. Reggie tugged on Julia's earlobe and kissed her neck while holding her tight against her chest. The unexpected affection snapped Julia back into her body, the last place she wanted to be. "I need you to drop me off at my brother's house." His top knot cocked like a dog's ear as he asked Reggie if the two of them could check in to make sure that it was safe to drive the wild child in his van. Reggie rolled her eyes. She was perched to enjoy all that straight privileged life had to offer, and the least they could do was get Julia where she was headed without being extra about it. Road games. Julia yanked Polaroids from the wall one by one at each mile marker, starting with the first one that she had tacked up. The timeline reflected a once happy, if bizarre, love triangle. She was stoned and on a fast track to tinnitus blasting Arthur Russell's World of Echo. The album was one of Franklin's cultural contributions to her life. All boy, all girl played as she progressed to the most recent Polaroids. The secret couple inside the throuple became, in a word, obvious. How would she have missed what was right in front of her face? Angry with herself, she abandoned the travel game and pulled down all the remaining Polaroids into one hefty stack. They were her Polaroids, after all. Let them stop her. She pulled them into the front compartment of her backpack and then crawled around the floor, stuffing rogue belongings beneath the main zipper. She remembered that the Three of Swords reverse had medicine, and when she arrived at Franklin's, she intended to hang like a bat and let the blade slide free. The van stopped. Unabomber Julia wasn't sure how long they were parked in front of Franklin's house before she looked up. The driver and passenger stared at her as if behind the shades and hoodie was 16-year-old prodigy Ted Kaczynski before the CIA ignited the problematic incel by dosing him with LSD. Her heart felt dead to them. Julia kicked an empty bag of Flamin' Hot Cheetos. Her stomach growled. The sound was honest and to the point. She was hungry, her animal body exiled from Meerkat Manor, flower dead from a snake bite. In earlier times, Reggie would have enjoyed her Stony Baloney line of flight. Reggie opened the door and stood there, arms crossed. Julia teetered under her swollen backpack as she gathered up the rest of her belongings. She slid from the van for the last time. Reggie shut the door behind her, then leaned against it with all her weight. She longed for Julia to invite her inside. She wanted to know what splendor lived behind Franklin's class jump. Julia was too high to process and too hurt. It seemed like a bad idea to spend more time together. Best laid plans. She needed a clean break. She looked at Reggie, her heartbreakingly sexy femme stash, and said, "He named his van Vance. You should name your first baby Babette. Have a really great marriage. I look forward to ignoring your registry." Julia stomped off in her backpack, arms loaded with thrifted outerwear, while Reggie refused to feel bad about her life choices. Sure, she had chosen an unremarkable man. Soon enough, Julia would forget his name and remember him only as Vance. Reggie felt torn by Julia's stoicism. She climbed into the passenger seat and watched Julia with the door still ajar. If Julia turned back, Reggie would jump free and try for a different outcome. Julia made it to the porch and stopped short. Reggie's pulse quickened. Julia flipped her a bird without looking back. Reggie felt stung. Vance suspected she might make a break for it. He removed his foot from the brake so the passenger door swung shut. Julia was relieved to hear the tires peel out because she had no clue where to find the house key. The last thing she wanted was an audience or their help. Julia fought back tears. She felt around the door frame, fingered ceramics on the front porch, and tossed the rubber welcome mat aside. She remembered that there was a lengthy text thread from Franklin about his house. She scrolled past his thoughtful words, her aggressive emoji replies, knives, chains, a zipper mouth face. She was rude, an ungrateful bitch, stupid, definitely not enough, and way too much. What was she doing again? The key. She scrolled until she found a photo of the rock with the door key taped beneath it. Success. She was a smart bitch, kinda rad. She was everything and even kept her word. Here she was, busy house-sitting for Franklin. Julia pushed the front door into a mountain of paper that cascaded down from an overstuffed mail slot. Once she entered, it was clear that her main responsibility, the houseplants, were in terrible shape. It was dark and dusty. She was exhausted. What difference would a few hours of neglect make? Julia closed a partially open shade, waded through the body of mail, and stumbled to the couch. She curled into the fetal position under a plush throw. It was too hard to remain awake without thinking about her family. It had been a year since the last time Julia was in this house. The joint funeral, their shared father and her mother, a car and camper accident near Big Sur. Bad luck and worse timing, a tire blown out from a puncture, rainstorm, slick roads, soft shoulder, lost control, car and camper skid off the coast. Oil, mud, rocks, cliff, sky, ocean, metal. Books just purchased at the Henry Miller Library, pots, pans, clothes, bedding, broken mason jars of bulk bin classics, trail mix, popcorn, nutritional yeast, granola, oats, dried mango, weed, then camping gear, Patagonia, Skechers, Dockers, and parents, Leonard, 80, Jane, 53, swam with the fishes. It was early evening when Julia stirred. She opened all the shades to a soft light that illuminated glittery dust twirling in the air somewhere between gross and magical. Julia needed to freshen up the space. She pushed the mail into a mound away from the front door. This felt like a major improvement, and enough for the moment. She turned on lamps and snooped around the living room. Franklin was an eclectic plant daddy with an appreciation for Victorian decor. He seemed like someone who went to estate sales and snagged any choice object that made him feel like an otherworldly time traveler. That said, Julia never understood collecting other people's old photographs, let alone framing them. Who the hell were these campy ancestors in gold leaf frames? Franklin's people did not hail from the Dust Bowl or a mink farm. What a weirdo. Their shared father was shut down and never talked about his relatives. Julia wondered if a childhood without the internet had created some kind of fantastical longing for kin. Or maybe this was just a creative exercise that helped Franklin write. Julia had only stayed here once before. She asked about the wall art, and he offered to take her thrifting as a way to deflect. She wondered if she would be equally weird and evasive in a couple of decades. Things certainly seemed to be headed that way. At 10 years old, Julia discovered Franklin's cast-off in a trash bag and hid them in her closet. His counterculture books, mixtapes, and ephemera intrigued her long before she grasped their significance. The stash had an aura. She blamed it for making her sexually adventurous, drug-curious, and the amount of gay she seemed to be. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Clement Goldberg. New Mistakes is out in September. It's going to be parties. And right now, out on the little merch table for Dopamine, there are some cool like risograph posters that are free. There's only 5 of them, though, so you have to run and get them. Thank you so much, Beyond Baroque, for this whole night. It's been so fun to get to hear and listen to everybody and see everybody. So good night. Thanks for coming.